Hello there, guys. Today we are painting an old subject in a new way, and that is a flock of flamingos. So this is not a sponsored video, but I am using my Arteza watercolors for this because they have the most pinks. So many pinks. And I used all of these pinks, I will have you know. So first things first, I drew the flock in a light reddish pink type color. And what I think I'm going to do for this piece is actually create kind of a gradient effect. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix up more of a peachy, orangish type pink color and start with that, and then move on to a little bit more of a magenta, cooler pink, I think. For the first layer of the flamingos, I'm pretty much treating them as just one cohesive shape almost, except I'm not painting the beaks because I want the beaks to remain a little bit lighter. I try to keep their shapes in mind a little bit because I do want to start to lay down some of those shadows and start to get some of that gradation going on and like variation in saturation and light and dark that watercolor is so good at. And when I do a painting like this, some people ask, where do I get my reference images from? What I'll do is I will look at all the flamingos on Google for a while, and I'll kind of get an idea about, the shapes and the colors and especially their personalities. And then I sort of basically make it up. There's not a picture of a flock of flamingos that looks like this. Sometimes I'll use a specific reference image a bit closer if I find an image that's great, but because this image is one of the sample images for a new picture book that I'm writing and that my agent and I are going to pitch to publishers, I sort of needed the flamingos to be doing certain things, and I'm almost creating my own little flamingo characters and flamingo world. So a lot of it is just out of my brain. I also have the benefit of, all of the characters in my style almost kind of seeming a certain way, like with their little eyes and their little happy expressions. So now you will see that we are moving on to a more true pink or a more reddish pink, so not as much of the orange. And you absolutely do not need a billion different pinks to achieve this. I just happen to actually like working with all of the different colors because it invites me to vary my color a little bit more. So you could totally achieve this with your traditional colors. It would be a little bit harder, especially to get some of the magentas and neon pinks going. It is a very, very relaxing process for me to paint one of these watercolors. It's almost kind of therapeutic. What I usually do is I have a painting sitting at my desk for about 4 days, sometimes a week, depending on its complexity. And I'll just put in like a few hours every day. And it's a really nice way to paint because with watercolor, you do need to allow time to dry. So here we are going into the second layer, as you see, and these are fully dried. If they weren't fully dried, it would activate the layer under and you wouldn't get the crisp lines that start to define the flamingos in the front. So just kind of taking my time with the paintings, I find really enjoyable if you do have time. And all of these paintings are sort of done on my own timeline. They're not client work. In fact, often I can't actually share client work in process, which is kind of challenging, I think, for artists and illustrators. So a lot of this work that I share is my own and kind of on my own time, essentially. And another benefit I find with taking a few days, taking my time to do it, is that when I walk away and I come back, I see things that I did not see before. So I don't feel that pressure to just, keep painting, keep going, get to the finish line. I actually have breathing room, and I look at it throughout the day and I notice things. And so what I've started to try to do with my more personal work is space it out a little bit more. And when I hit that wall where I feel like almost like painting becomes a chore, or I don't inherently know where to go next and my brain starts to sort of force solutions, I try to put the paintbrush down, because I do find that that's when I start to rush things and potentially make mistakes or lay down paint that I didn't want to. So as you can see, after this second layer, the flock starts to really look like a flock. And it's a really fun time where you can really start to sort of play with all of these different tones and all of these different shades and really explore the versatility of pink. And basically with this type of layering technique, you keep building until you feel that you're done. There's no right or wrong. It's completely based on sort of aesthetics. And what I always do is try to retain the loose feeling of watercolor. So I don't want anything to be too overworked or too realistic or too contrived, but yet I do want to get that beautiful depth and richness of color and start to, make these flamingos pop and sort of make the eye naturally see all of them and want to explore the page more. And it's funny because although all of these flamingos are, kind of the same, and this is a lot of the theme of the story about, kind of belonging and sameness and what happens when you feel different type thing. I will talk more about this story later as it comes to life. But you can see that each of their unique personalities really does start to emerge, from the sameness of having feathers and being pink and stuff. They all do kind of have their own ways of standing and looking, and this starts to become more pronounced during my favorite parts, always my very favorite part, which is putting the expressions on the characters. I love this part so much because I feel like this is really when they come to life, when you put the little eyes on them. And I'm using a 0.1 micron for this. I thought about using a pencil, but I thought that the black would be nice because the beaks ultimately are going to be black. So we want something that you can see through the black paint of the beaks. And you can see that with just a really subtle variation in the placement of the eye and the shape of the mouth, you can start to get really different emotions coming through, which is really important in illustrating children's books. The emotions are really important for the children to start to, try to define. notice and match to how they're feeling themselves. Flamingos, different species have different beaks, but the ones that I like to do have this little peachy sort of pink thing in addition to the black. So I'm doing that little bit of the beak. And now probably my second favorite part of painting this piece, again, just because I really feel like it starts to bring out the flamingo's personality so much, is painting the black on the beaks. Also because it requires a lot of precision, and my brush, which is my go-to, really one of the only brushes that I use these days, it's a Princeton Velvet Touch brush number 8. It has this beautiful pointy tip, and so it can get the wide areas and just do as well with the pointy areas too. So this was a finicky little bit of the painting, but I don't know, it requires so much focus that it almost became kind of meditative, I feel like. I love the contrast of all of the pink, and then this bold black. I feel like just graphically, aesthetically, it's so pleasing. It's like so 80s to me. And it was just really nice to paint with this limited palette, actually, because sometimes when you have a limited color palette and a limited amount of colors to choose from, you see how far you can go with that palette, and how expressive and varied it really can be. And then for the legs, I really feel like there's something about flamingos that remind me so much of ballet dancers. They're so graceful, and just the way that they stand. And I decided to do the legs in a peach colored pencil, just in a really fast way, not too much precision, just kind of looking like they're all standing, with some symmetry and every which way, and tried to keep some movement in the piece and stuff like that. That was important. In fact, I kind of feel like this is like a flamingo musical waiting to happen. Like they're about to burst into song and synchronized dance. And voila, look how far a little pink can go. So I hope that you enjoyed this making of a flock of flamingos, and I will talk to you again soon. TTFN.